Thank you for that welcome. Sorry about that. How good was that? Who loves that testimony? Yeah, that was incredible. Absolutely incredible. I'd love to hear more from you, Beck. But how good is it that we can testify of the things that God does in us, through us, and for us? Right? Who's got a testimony that they are just so grateful for? Yeah. Well, as you can see, we're going to play a game of musical chairs this morning. What? Who's good at this game? No, just kidding. We're not going to play a game of musical chairs. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Rather than a preach, rather than a message, we're going to have a conversation in my living room. All right, and many of you have been in my living room and know what it's like, that we can just talk for hours and the conversations can go down these rabbit holes and somehow we get on random things, but we often are talking about the things of God. All right, and today's going to be no different. I'm going to invite some friends up in a second that are going to have a conversation with me, and I hope that this conversation can be engaging with you, that you don't just disappear, because we're going to talk about some things, and my hope is that the things that is said up on this stage today is more powerful than if it was just me here. Because, you know, when one can put how many to flight? 1,000. Two can put how many to flight? It's 3. I'm good at counting. So with me having some friends up here, my hope, my prayer is that the message comes across from you and you find some gold in what is said today. That, you know, these guys are going to share their lives, hopefully, some things that they've gone through and all those ups and downs, and I hope that you can take away something. So would you please, very cautiously and calmly, but excitedly at the same time, because we don't want to scare them, but we want to encourage them. Can you please help me invite Chanel, Martin, and Jeff up to... Welcome. The first lesson is, how does the microphones work?
Testing.
Please take a seat.
Where do you want me to take it?
I said take a seat and I'll make a joke.
Take it away.
Please sit on the seat provided for you.
Right here.
How are you guys?
Good.
Good?
Good. Nervous.
Nervous?
Yes.
Like
That too.
honest answers. I told these guys that I want honest answers. Real. Like, we're a church of authenticity, you know, a church that values authentic everything. Everything from the relationships to the conversations to the way we worship, right, is authentic. So they might not share all the scary details, but they have to be authentic, even in the nervousness. So these guys were sent through a list of kind of conversational questions that we're going to go through today. They don't have them in front of them, but I do, because I would never remember the answers to the questions. But today we're talking about church, all right? Who knows we're in the church? Yeah. We had a great conversation at Breakout. That's why I brought Jeff, because he's the funny one. We had a great conversation at Breakout this week, and we were talking about how the church operates. We were talking about mantles and anointings and the church and the difference between the church and the temple. And I got a moment to share, and I'm going to kind of touch on it very briefly here, is that when Jesus came, he changed the system of worship. He changed the system of congregation. Before Jesus, the Jewish people went to the temple to worship. Before that, they went to the mountain to worship. And when he came, he met the woman at the well, and he said, soon there'll be a time where it doesn't matter whether you go to the temple or to the mountain, it's about whether you worship in spirit and in truth. And that was kind of the purpose of the temple, was to house the presence of God and for a place for people to worship him. No different to today. We come here to the building of church to worship God. But he didn't create the church building. He created the church. And the church was the body of believers, right? When the body of believers comes together to worship, that's the church. All right, so we can say that we are the church and individually we are not. Individually, we are the temple of the Holy Spirit. We became the temple where God's presence delights to dwell. Right? As we come together to worship, we become the church. Yet, we're also people in that, and that comes with a whole bunch of things. Fun things. So, the first question I have for you guys, we're good so far? Yeah? Cool. Remember, encouraging, but not scary. The first kind of conversation or point that I want to talk about is, what is church to you? In no particular order. Who's got a...
I'll go.
Go.
Church is a family, like it's belonging, it's... Like I've lived a life outside of church in the grand scheme of things. I've probably only been a Christian, a practicing Christian, if you want to say, for probably, I don't know, maybe about 11, 12 years maybe. So for me, I never felt like I belonged anywhere until I found a church. And then it's like this whole group of people, and even though we're all little weirdos in our own right, and we're all so different, we all fit and belong like we are. Like none of us are perfect, none of us, and it's actually really nice to feel like you actually belong in a place. And I mean, what a great place to belong. But yeah, it's a belonging.
A belonging place for a bunch of weirdos.
Yeah, absolutely. You're in there too.
Yeah. I would agree with that. You guys got something to add into that? What is church to you?
Chanel, you took my answer.
Sorry, Mark.
Well, don't take mine. I read your answers. That's right.
Who gave you that?
So for me, church is similar to what Chanel said, except for the weirdos. Probably a bunch of eggs. But
Bon earths.
it's family. It's a community of believers where we together on this journey of following Jesus. It doesn't always look the same, and we're not always going through the same stuff, but we're together, encouraging one another, onward and forward till the day he comes back. And that's it. And sometimes it's messy because it's family. And it's learning to follow Jesus in the midst of that. Because family, you can't just, well, you shouldn't. You can't just go, hey, that's it, see you later. We've got family, your own personal family, that's a bit messed up. As I'm probably a bit messed up. But there's still family. That's it. And you go through seasons where you just, it's difficult, but you push through, to the end. Because you're wanting everyone to stay on the journey, stay on the path, and make it to that day. That's what it is for me.
Yep.
You definitely took all my answers.
Yeah, I knew he would. Something about being the last person on the end of the question. All the good answers are taken. So, to you, Jeff, since you're the next on that line, is it high value in your life, church?
Definitely.
Yep.
Definitely high value in my life. Like we've shared, like the other two have shared, that it's family. It's what gives us life. It's what encourages us. It's what helps us get through those hard times.
Yep.
It's something that I yearn for each all the time. Like when I was in a youth team in Sydney, and I was in church. Like we were at the church building every day. Like that was where I found joy. That's where I found happiness. That's where I was lifted up and encouraged. So to be in that is what I want to be all the time.
Yeah. So, I mean, for all of you now, is there times where you haven't valued the gathering together of church? Yeah? Keep going, Jeff.
Yeah, definitely. There's been times where I've not been involved in the church before mid-20s, I came to know God. And before that, I didn't have God. I was dead inside. I was looking everywhere for what I needed and having a big hole where God was supposed to be. And not until I came to God did I know that that's what I needed. What was the question?
I can't remember. I was hoping you would.
You've got the questions in front of you.
I'm trying to remember the questions and the answers all at once.
That you haven't valued the gathering.
Well, I didn't value it then.
Yep.
Before I came to God at all, because I didn't know it. But then there's been times where I've moved away again and not been involved in community. You know what I mean? I've been going to a church, but I'm not in community, you know? And it's different. It's when you don't have community, it's not really church.
Yeah. Okay, so let's pull on that thread for a second. So you can go to church, you can turn up to a Sunday service, you can lift your hands and worship and still not be in church, all right? Because that concept of church, for everyone here, let's engage you for 2 seconds. The concept of church is not just a place for you to come and worship. It's a place where we join together in worship. As everyone has said already, it's a place where we grow together. It's a place where we connect with one another. And so, hey, as a pastor, I've seen it a lot, and especially from up on the stage. You see the people that duck out the door right at the end of service, and they miss church. Right? They got a message, they got worship, but they miss the connection of community. So how does that work in the concept of church, taking it away from this building?
I think COVID was a really good example of taking church away from the building. Like, I think at that time, you really knew whether or not you had a strong church community around you, because if you didn't, that's when you were in isolation and you didn't have that. But what it means outside of church is not just gathering here on a Sunday and then ducking out the door as fast as you can because we've all got stuff on. It means like coming to people's houses and building friendships and helping, and it's like having your own little village. Takes a village, and this is our village, and that means in your everyday life just supporting that village, and same, they support you as well. So that's church outside of church.
Yeah. So how do you find the time for that kind of thing? I know not everyone has the amount of time that I have in my life, but how do you find that time when you go to work, when you've got a family of your own, and then you go to church on a Sunday and you might be a part of a midweek group? How do you find that time to dive deeper into the community? How do you find that time to connect with people?
I just don't do the housework. There's piles of washing at home, the house is a mess, but that's pretty much the only thing that can miss out.
Everyone can be honest, right? We've got a pile of washing somewhere.
Or folding, like 5 baskets of folding, because it's washed.
It's washed.
Just never actually folded or then put away, It is really hard though, because working full time and then participating in things and then, outside on weekends, and you're kind of torn between wanting to do lunch and do all those things, but that there's like 5 baskets of washing that needs to be done at home, and you're running out of daylight, and at school tomorrow you haven't done uniforms and the floor's a mess and, all the rest of it. So, I think there's a careful balance of, making sure you have undies to wear on a Monday because you haven't done the washing, and, spending time with your friends outside of church. But, you have to find that balance. Sorry, Jaden.
Real answers. Love it. Yeah.
But there is about balance. Like, it's not every week that we'll do something, because obviously you need time to catch up and that sort of thing as well. So, but yeah, definitely making time to prioritize, because otherwise you'll just go insane if you're just doing housework and, you know, come and go, that's it. And then there's no social aspect or
No
connection.
life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no life. Yeah.
Just to add to that, I had a different aspect to it also. But Chanel was correct. You've got to be intentional with meeting up with people. And there's a lot going on in our lives. I was talking to Kirsty this morning about, you know, community and stuff. And in the West, community is actually, I think, a little difficult for us. Whereas if it's like, I was thinking, you know, Amish community, it's from a little kid to the eldest, you know you're part of a village. Whereas us, we have to be really intentional. But I was thinking too, like when I go to work, as far as the church, I mean, I meet a lot of the church. I work in Coorong, most of you know that. But even when I'm out somewhere else, I always think of the way I greet people, the way I, you know, someone comes in a shop and they're got something wrong with them, you know, or they're discouraged because of a family member or whatever, and I make it a point to pray with them, either there, or if they're embarrassed, we'll go out the back, or just encourage them with something, because I can't just, I don't know what it's like. You know, when you were growing up, I don't know if it's the same with girls, but for boys, you know, we used to say, oh, my dad's better than your dad. Yeah. You know, my dad can bash up your dad. You know, my dad's got a faster car than your dad's. You know, it's a heap. And so, for me, I'm not trying to be spiritual. I just can't help it. It's like if someone gets discouraged, and I'm like, come on, this is who we serve.
Yeah.
And I mean, majority of the time people leave, you know, a whole lot more uplifted by the time they go, because all of a sudden they can see again, hey, he's good, you know. And so, I don't know, that aspect for me is that's outside the community too, is just being the church. So you're meeting together, but then not just doing the everyday, oh, the weather, you know, it's been wet, and, you know, this and that. What are you doing on the weekend? How's work going on that? But really, you know, trying to get God into it, because that's who we are. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not applicable?
Not applicable. Cool. I think that's a really important kind of point there to say, Martin, is there's a difference between gathering with one another every day of the week or no days of the week. But if we gather and all we talk about is how wet it is, because, like, it's been raining, guys. Did you notice? Like, how's your puddles? Right? And so there's very little meaningful growth in that conversation. The concept that we're talking about of this community is that growth, is that change, is that, hey, I'm going through this. Or, hey, I saw this in the Word of God. God revealed something to me. Or, I've got a question and I don't understand what this means. Can you help me? And so there has to be a balance of that real of what we're going through. These guys here helped me process some pigs at our place.
Wasn't going to mention it.
Yeah, it wasn't going to mention it. But it wasn't a God thing. Now, we thank God for the blessing and the provision over our families, but there was a life thing, and then we sat down and conversation started, and that's when the God thing comes in. Sometimes we have to be intentional and go, hey, we haven't talked about God today.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know when the last time you had a conversation with someone about God was. Now, in my life, we make an effort to engage a God conversation all the time. We talk about the things of God, and that's where that church growth of community happens. It can happen with our family members. It can happen with our friends. It can happen with people that we run into, and we can just be an encouraging word to them. That is the community of church. So, has there ever been a time that you felt disconnected from church? I think I've started this question. but spent time either in church and not a part of the community or outside of church altogether?
I haven't really had a massive disconnection from church since I started coming, but at our old church, there was someone there that I thought I could trust and worked out that I couldn't, and I nearly left church because of her. And I was only a new Christian at the time, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm never about drama. I'll just take myself away from it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, nah, not dealing with it. I'm not going back there. And it was only that I was going to church with my best friend, and she spoke to one of the other pastors who came to our house and said, no, offence is the easiest way for the enemy to get in. As soon as there's an offence created, then his job's done because you're about to leave. Yeah. And it was only like a couple of weeks that I was gone for before she intervened, and then that hit home with me. So at that point, I thought, well, it doesn't matter because there's that many people there. I can kind of hide if I wanted to anyway, but I'm going because that's my journey with God, and I'm not going to let someone ruin my journey with God, because this is my happiness and my future and where I want to be. And if I have to sit in the back and not connect with anyone, then I'll do that. Obviously, it didn't work out that way because I went and everything was still fine. It was just her. But yeah, like that's probably the only time that I've been disconnected from church since I started coming, because I know what life's like outside of church. And even when we moved up here, obviously when we were trying to find, work out which church we were going to go to, that's probably the biggest time that I didn't have. But it was always on my mind. And we were watching church on YouTube anyway to, stay connected to God, but obviously not connected to a church until we worked it all out. But I'm too scared to not be in a church and not be connected, because I know what life's like without God, and I don't want to be there.
Awesome. That's the follow-up question.
Yeah. Sorry.
What's life like without church, without that community, even without God? Yeah. I know Beck's testimony of the tithing, right? You know the difference now in your life.
Yeah. Well, for me, before I had God, I was trying to find a void filler in every other way possible. I've shared my testimony before. I was a drug addict. That was kind of my go-to thing. Anytime something bad happened, I was always doing it anyway, but then I would just get worse. That's where I'd go to. Something bad happens in life, that would, I'd go there. There was a period where I got off it for about 12 months, and then I got bored and something else happened, and then that was just my go-to at that point. And obviously I was chasing a void filler at the time, a Jesus-sized hole that I didn't realise that's what it was at the time. Yeah. And for me, I clearly remember what that was like and living that life, and I'm too scared. I know I would never go back to that life, but I don't want to even be in that thought process. I've got no one to turn to, because now I turn to God, and I know that if something's happening and I pull back and I pray about it, I'll read my Bible and then just, process that for a while. I'm never on my own. I'm never completely at rock bottom like I was at that time. So I don't want to go back there. I'm not going to disconnect again.
Yeah. Martin, how about you? What's have you experienced times without church, without even God, and what's that like? Or not like?
Without going into a testimony in that, yes, prior to becoming a Christian, of course. But probably the main time was during COVID for a bit. Church was hard, so we left our previous church, not a previous church, but the previous church. During that time, because it was hard. The boys were a lot younger, and they were in and out of creche, and it was easier for me because I was on the worship team, and Kirsty was just in and out. So she didn't hear the message. We'd end up going home, and she'd be like, "What? Why did we go there for?" Yeah. That was difficult. But then during that time, we had a home church. We were doing church at home and church at other people's homes, and outdoors when the weather was good. and that was great. But once we moved to Kempsey, it started getting a little difficult because the church started, I think, if I remember right, I'm not sure, sweetie, but 9:30. And so driving from here to there, it was almost on the way to Warhope. So it was just a bit more. It was just really hard to get there, especially getting the kids out of the house, as you parents would know. So we decided, look, we're going to take a break. But probably the time where I felt distant was we moved here, we started renovating, and so there was a lot of Sundays I was working. So, doing 7 days a week. And it was easy to go, okay, we got another job. The jobs never end. And so when Kirsty said to me, I didn't know the churches around here, and Kirsty said, I feel like we should go to this church. And I'm never, no. I'm just like, yeah, sweet. Because that's not normal necessarily. You've heard her testimony, because that's not normal for her. She's always had struggles with church in as far as the aspect of people not being real. And so, her background, my background, there's a reality to life. And so when you go to a church that's supposed to be real and then it's not, it was just difficult. So when she said, yeah, let's go to Transformation Church, I didn't know who went here. I knew that I would know some people just because I work at Coorong, but...
You're Martin from Coorong.
That's right. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how we ended up here. And I just feel like that was the Lord's leading. But yeah, that time, just probably renovating for 9 months straight, travelling from Port to Kempsey, and working a lot of the Sundays just to be able to move into home. And so that was probably the most distant. But as far as thinking about myself outside of the church, I forget exactly how the question was, in what context, but I can't imagine just not doing it anymore. Because when I got saved, it's real. There's no... so where am I... Like, do you know when Peter said, Lord, where are we going to go? You have the words of life. Like, I know that everything else is there's a blessing in it, but it's just like the truth. It's kind of like living your life knowing that you're going to meet him one day. And you're like... And so I couldn't imagine going that way. I could imagine getting into a place and being tempted and just, you end up there and you go, how did I get here? But I wouldn't want it after you know the truth. It's kind of like there's just an emptiness. You're just going through the motions, knowing that, it's all real. And so I'll always get into prayer. Like every time I'm getting close or something's trying to lead me away, I'm like, Lord, I don't want this. You got to do something, So yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a great way to feel that God-shaped hole in your heart is coming to a church and being connected with a community. There's a wholeness that's created. Without it, we can wander around the wilderness. We can feel empty. We can feel lost. We can lose our strength to, life can get monotonous and get up, go to work, come home, get up, go to work, come home. And I mean, even for myself, I've experienced that of working what felt like 2 jobs. Go to work, come home and care for the family. There was no life in what was happening. There was no friendships. There was no community. And honestly, there was very little God. So, my next question is, have you and how have you changed since coming to Transformation Church?
It's me.
You're up, mate.
Okay. How have I changed? Well, I'm sitting here.
Amen.
That's not something I want to do or feel comfortable doing.
Yep.
So how I changed, I've said yes to God more. I've laid down my worries and my cares about what other people may think and reflected and gone, well, that's not what God's saying, that's just what other people are saying.
Yeah. That is good.
And, getting into trouble, I don't like getting in trouble. But again, I've reflected and gone, well, my heart isn't to do it wrong.
Yeah.
My heart isn't to offend people. So I can let that go now. That's something that's definitely changed in me since I've been at this church. I'm also doing worship, which I've never done in my life. Even sung in front of anyone before I got on this stage and sung. I've never done in my life.
Okay.
So that may explain a few things, if you're wondering. Yeah, so that's a lot of things that have changed for me. My family life has changed a lot.
Yeah.
There is joy and happiness at times at home now instead of never at all.
Yeah. That's good.
Which is lovely. Yeah, that's about it.
Very good.
It's probably more if I think about it, but I'll give other people a go.
Yeah. I'd be the first to testify that you three have, because you're here, and not limited to you three, but you three because you're sitting right in front of me. Literally, the spotlight's on you. You all have changed. You all have grown in ways. But so the question is exactly like Jeff answered. How you identifying that in your life, Martin?
This is a hard one. You wouldn't think so, because you don't naturally see yourself growing. Maybe it's through other people telling you something, but I suppose for me is like I work in retail, and talking to people isn't difficult for me, but when I go to a new place or I'm at a, where I don't know anyone, I'm totally different. I don't know. And so just getting to know a whole bunch of different people, yeah. And just trying new things. I'm very much someone who wants to be a part of it and is willing to help. And so some of you have probably seen me in the little cafe in there trying to figure out how to make a coffee. And last week didn't go very well.
I want to encourage you. You're doing great. Well done.
Perfect.
The coffee ended up all over me. But as far as growing, more of it's really in a sense of being confident enough to say, yeah, I'm going to give it a go. And I couldn't care less if I fall flat on my face.
Awesome.
Because you rarely do. And so, yeah.
It's a good answer. Chanel?
I think my growth is more a personal growth of learning who I am in God. Like, I knew I was a big part of our old church, and I do it because, like Marto said, you want to help, you want to be a part of it, that's what you want to do. But I don't know, I kind of always have imposter syndrome. Like, I'm never good enough. I always compare myself to other people. But being here, and this is probably only maybe the last 6 months, I've really had like a revelation of learning who I am in God, and that, I'm not always worthy of the blessings that we have, but I wonder sometimes like why we are blessed so much. And now I'm being awoken to the fact of who I am in God, and that maybe some of it we are, there's a reason that God's blessing us for that, And it's really hard. Like, it's hard to accept a blessing sometimes when I know that we're so not deserving of what we're given. But I don't know, I'm kind of seeing more that I am obedient a lot more than I realise, and just growing in that space, you know. I will always take on things. I really probably will never say no, but don't add to that, okay? All right. That's,
Yeah. I mean, ever since you've walked in the door, Chanel, you've had a servant's heart, you know, wanting to serve. But I love that you just said that you've been growing in obedience.
Yeah.
Right? Not to man, but to God.
Yeah.
And that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Right? We can listen to what someone tells us to do, but if we're not listening to what God tells us to do, what God kind of shares with us and puts on our hearts, then we miss everything. Nothing else matters but God. And so, you know, this is called Transformation Church for a purpose, and that's for transformation.
Yeah.
Right? We want to see people come in the door and change, not because we don't like people and who they are and what they're, but because, like, God sees. Are you sharing that today, or I don't know? God sees the formed thing in the clay. Right? He is the potter and we are the clay, and he sees what he created us for, and he's just working that out. And yes, you all are stepping up into scary things and being obedient into scary things, and you're doing great so far, right? Yeah. They're doing good? Yeah. So good. How are you guys going? Good? Very good. So, the church doesn't exist without the community, all right? The community can exist without the church, but we don't want it to. So we can have a group of people that gather together without the church, without calling it a church, without God in it. So my question is, how did you come to church, a place where there's believers and people that worship, people that pray, and people that have a community, and how did you get involved into the community?
Yeah, so when I first got saved, a long time ago it seems now, I grew up Catholic, so I don't know if this makes sense, but it's like every other denomination, and I didn't call them a denomination because you just didn't know what that was. Every other denomination or church was like a cult. If you're a Catholic, it's like, and growing up Maltese, that's it. You're just part of your community. Everyone else is like, what do you go there for? You know, like. And so for a long time, I wasn't going to church. I wasn't a good church member, if you know what I mean. As far as a Catholic goes, I was a pretty bad one. And so when I first got saved, and I got saved at home, it wasn't within a church building, and the Holy Spirit put it on my heart to go to church. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I should go to church because that's what Christians do. It was there. And I'm like, I've got to go. And I remember getting up to go to church at like 7 a.m, and my mum's like, what are you doing up so early? And I'm like, going to church. She's like, what? Like, it's a long time since we went to church. And, or talked about that sort of thing. And I had no idea where to go. So we had a lady who was renting the home we ended up eventually buying, and she went to the Salvation Army, and I'm like, Salvation Army, is that a church? And so I ended up rocking up there and asking a few questions about it. Really, it was based on the Bible. You know, did they believe the Bible? Because you know, the Lord had shown me that the Word was true. And so I said to him, I gave him some money, and I said to the guys there in Port, I said, you know, all right, I'll be there Sunday. So I ended up going to church. And I don't know if you guys have ever been to a Salvation Army gathering, but I walked in and I'm thinking, man, there's so many coppers around, you know, because they're all in uniform, see? And but they just made me feel really welcome. You mean, look, I rocked up, I was riding a motorbike, I had a big black beard, big earring, you know, all of that sort of, I had hair then. You know, but they really made me feel welcome. And as far as becoming a part of the church, I think one of the things I did, and I'm not saying it's right, but I couldn't say no. So if they asked me to do something, I'd say yes. And there's a story behind that too. And so I was doing hospital visits with the team. I was doing nursing home visits. I wasn't working full time, so I ended up doing kids' church. Hated that. I was doing kids' church. Like, those kids were crazy. I remember going through a situation where I wanted to leave the church because there was certain people who I just felt like, you know, they would say hello to the person right next to me, but they wouldn't say hello to me. And I'm like, so I went home, I remember, and I said, Lord, that's it, I'm leaving. And I had a little one-room flat, so I would be pacing the room. That's how I pray, I pace. And I'm like, Lord, I'm leaving, that's it. And the Lord spoke, and he said, I don't want you to go there for you. And I want you to go for them. And I went, all right. So I ended up on the front door greeting people. I wasn't even on a roster. I don't even know how I ended up on this. Anyway, I started greeting people, and I ended up becoming friends with every single person in that church. I would go through every single aisle and say hello and talk to every single person. And this is a person who, that's not natural for me. Yes, I work and that's what I do as a job, but that's not natural for me. And so I started doing that. I read scripture. I remember we spoke about it at Jaden's house, where at school and even beyond that, like, doing secondary education and stuff like that, I could not talk in front of 5 people. I would start bawling, almost bawling my eyes. I was that nervous. And so to get to a place where I ended up, just by giving it a go and saying yes, reading scripture, praying in front of people. I don't know how many sermons I did and actually ran the church. You know what I mean, like the service, worked out the service. I would never have done that outside of God. Like, I would never have done that. And I ended up on a worship team. Like, how does that happen? I'm not saying I'm any good at playing guitar, but I've done combined churches service where you have 1,000 people and you're playing guitar over it. I'm like, and that's just through saying yes and just giving it a go, failing a lot. But that's how I ended up getting into it. It's just that not giving up and just saying yes. You know, so.
Yeah. That's a good answer.
What was the question again?
How do you become a part of the church community?
How do I become part of the church community?
Yeah.
Well, it was through God. Like, when I got saved, people prayed for me, and I could see Jesus in front of me, and he was just wiping off all the sin off my shoulders. So at that point, I'm like, wow, I need to change my life, and I need to be part of the church, because the load that was lifted off me, the worry, the cares were all gone.
Yeah.
And I was free.
Yeah.
I could, like, literally feel that freedom at that point. So at that point, I knew I had to be in a church, or did I? I went to a prayer group with Mum and Dad, and a very small prayer group, 12 people maybe, and that was my church. And that didn't last long. I didn't last long there.
Yeah.
And fell away. But as God does, he doesn't let us get away, and he draws us back. And I came back, and I was just broken because I couldn't leave again, but I couldn't be there. It didn't feel like I could be there. It didn't feel like it was enough of God. So I told the pastor or the leader of the group, which was my uncle, and he's like, well, okay. They were in relationship with a community in Sydney called Servants of Jesus. And this was probably 200 or 300, 400 people when we left. Community, covenant community, ecumenical covenant community. And they had a youth team. And this is a full-time youth team. They didn't work. They lived off people giving them money. And that's how we survived, was people donating money to us, giving us money while we were on this youth team. So that's where I came to be in church, was on this youth team, and living it every day and loving it most of the time, not really always, because there were lots of things they wanted you to do that weren't me. Stand in front of people talking, getting up and doing skits. Hello, I don't think so. All right. So that was, yeah. I didn't really have a choice with saying no to that, because you were in the team, so you just had to do it.
Yeah. So how did you overcome your personality? Because, I mean, you and Martin have different personalities, but kind of ended up in the same situation of saying yes to serving. So how did you overcome your personality, Jeff, to engage into that?
Saying yes to Jesus.
Yeah. Well,
It's a very simple answer, but it was denying myself and trying to illuminate him.
Yeah, that's it. So we can clap. You want to clap? They don't clap for me, Jeff.
Yeah, they do.
It's really interesting when you hear the three of these guys talk in that space, that the answers were God first. The people stuff got worked out in it, right? So yes to God and yes to serving God meant serving with people. And so that's engaging in different areas, and even if that means engaging in the kids team. I don't like that one either. But it's really hard to come into a church building just to receive the experience of church, just to sit in the seat, worship, message, thank you.
You miss out if you do that.
Sorry?
You miss out if you just do that.
That's right. You miss out. I think that comes almost under the banner of a lukewarm Christian, and you've wasted your own time, because it's more than just coming here. Like the God that we have here, you can have in your living room at home. Right? So if you don't engage with another person here, you could have saved yourself the drive. Now, I myself am naturally, I know it sounds weird to say, but naturally introverted. I don't like talking to people, right? And so talking to a new person is like this horrible feeling inside of me. It's probably a horrible sound that came out. But I'm not the person that's great at greeting people. And so we've had people come through church, my whole life, that have not connected with someone and felt like no one's connected with them. So what would you say to someone that hasn't connected and has felt like people have not connected? Martin, you said that you had people that chose to speak to someone not near you but not next to you. You felt like they didn't receive you. So how do you cope with that and transition that into connecting with people? Because that's a feeling, right? That's a rejection feeling.
Yeah. And we all experience it. We all can easily get offended.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, I don't know if it's a natural thing, because it's easy to get offended and then just run. That's normal. But I went through it a few times where I just, I took it to God. It didn't mean I knew the answer. It didn't mean that, just because you take it to God, it means you know that you're not even sure what's he going to say. But you're airing out, you're just laying it bare and saying, Lord, I'm angry, or they said this, or they did this. And the person who offended you might not even know they've done anything wrong, but we feel it. And I think what I've learned is to take it to God and see what he says. Just really don't... For example, there was a Bible study I went to, and who's a friend, they're still friends. I haven't seen them for a little while, but I was going to this Bible study, which was not a part of the church. I was at the Salvation Army. But I was very much going to different Bible studies. There was always a connection within the greater church. But he had a deliverance ministry in his home. Like, we would gather as men and talk about, the word, and so he had a deliverance ministry. And so that, for me, was like, I don't know about this stuff. So I took it home and I said, Lord, it was a real push. It wasn't just a simple, oh, Lord, I had to really push in and say, Lord, I don't get this stuff. I feel like running away because it just seems a bit out there. And, I kept on pushing, and then within a week I got an answer that all that stuff's actually legit and it's in the Word. And so I was able to continue on. But I could have easily just left and then missed out on a whole bunch of ministry opportunities and friendships and so forth, and many friends that I still have to this day because of that. So for me to encourage anyone is that when you get offended, I'll try not to be preachy like my wife says, is
can't help it.
If you're a Christian, no, she can't. If you're a Christian, Jesus is Lord. And you choosing to follow him, and when he says forgive or love, because you can't just, he's trumped your expectation or the bar on love. He says love your enemies. So pretty much everyone comes under that. There's no one actually taking you captive and persecuting you yet. So everyone comes under that. And so it's like, Lord, you're first, so I'm following you. This is hard. What do I do in this situation? They're family. That's what I used to do in the world. If you said the wrong thing, I cut you off. That you're done. That's it. I will never talk to you again. I did that a lot. And so, and since being a Christian, it's just, Lord, this hurts, but I'm following you. What do I do in this? Because his way is the way, and you'd be surprised what he does. But you have to intentionally go to him. You have to intentionally want to choose what he says to do. It's not always easy. You're going to have a lot of emotions and feelings, but you have to push in, because the moment the enemy takes you out of that, or you leave church, you're putting yourself in a scenario that you might be destroyed. That's it. So.
Does anyone else forget the question when Martin starts preaching?
Sorry.
Not because it's boring, not because we're tuned out. I'm like, yeah, just preach it. Preach it, Marto.
I'm turning red now, aren't I?
Oh, it's so good. We are the body, all right? We are Christ's body, which is what the church is. And so we have different purposes and different places that we serve and different, attributes. Some might serve in the kids team, some might serve cleaning the toilets, some might be mowing the lawn, some might be preaching, some might be praying for people, some might be going to the hospitals and doing ministry visits, some might be traveling overseas and doing missionary trips. So how do you, because I don't know all of what you guys have done in your life of church, but how do you find the difference in value of the different areas?
We had a preacher come to our church in Sydney, and he said every time he went somewhere, he'd check the toilets.
Yep.
He's like, if the toilets weren't clean,
Yeah.
there is no point being there.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do the lowest thing,
How good's that?
then there's no point. There's no point.
That is so true.
So,
We can, as people, we can focus on the bigger things, on the platform ministry, but if we can't get the toilets cleaned, we've got a problem.
Woo! I think you've got to stop and think about the blessing in each thing that you do. Like I've done welcome at our old church. I started in kids, and I didn't want to do kids when I started because I'm not good with other people's kids, and I really have to like the person to be able to tolerate their kids. And this was past me. And they said, can you be on kids? We need more people on kids. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no worries.
Isn't that
I can
every
do
church
kids.
does that? Like,
Oh, I know, right? Well, obviously now. And I went in there and I'm like, all right. And there was this one little boy who I'm sure had autism, and he didn't want to, like he always sort of sat back away from everyone else and didn't really want to be around everyone else, but he liked me, and I went up to him and got down low and just, engaged him, and didn't talk a lot because he wasn't really very responsive. But then when he would get upset, he would come to me, and it was the sweetest thing ever. And I think from that moment, that really changed my heart on not wanting to do kids. Like when you build that trust with them enough that when they're upset and they're away from their parents and you're it, and they're happy to come to you and you can pick them up and give them a hug when they cry, like that is a massive blessing in itself. So that then made me see the blessing in being with the kids and learning their individual, little quirks, and then forming a relationship with them on wherever they needed to be met. And that's the same with being on Welcome. And then I was on New Friends. We had a whole team where one of the pastors and I literally stood at the door and greeted people and picked out the new people. And then we'd invite them afterwards. And it was so exhausting. Like, I know I come across as an extrovert, but talking to new people, I would have to go home and have a sleep. Like, I was so spiritually drained, like sitting there and talking, so how are you? And sometimes they were a really tough crowd.
yeah.
So hard to get a conversation. I mean, the youth kids are like that now, so I've had that background to obviously lead me to where I am now. But I'm sitting there and talking to them. So when you're trying to make chit-chat, what do you do? Oh, yeah, I work at wherever. Oh, yeah, and how long have you been here for? Not long. And you're like, oh, this is tough, and it's so exhausting. Anyway, they were so nervous, but in that moment, I needed to be there and I needed to meet them, and I need to look like I wasn't being an introvert that was scared of them just as much as they were scared of me, because this was the first time they'd been to our church.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be the person that ruined their relationship with God. So it wasn't about me at that time. This was about God, and they needed to know. Because when I first started going to church, the pastor that I worked with on the New Friends team met me at the door, and she was this beautiful, sweet lady. I love her to bits. And she was so engaging and so sweet and just the perfect Christian. Like, it was just perfect. And then she called me after and we met for prayer and stuff, and I thought, oh wow, like if it wasn't for her I probably wouldn't have gone back, because she made me feel comfortable because I was so nervous. It was the first time.
Wow.
And then every time we did New Friends, I had to remember that that's what I was being to them.
Yep.
And if I didn't show up for that, then maybe they didn't come back. But maybe if they went to the toilets and the toilets weren't clean, they wouldn't come back. And maybe if their coffee wasn't good, they wouldn't come back. Mardo, we'll help you, don't worry. It's all right. But every role that we play may influence someone's journey with God, because at that time, if they're a new Christian and this is their first place that they've been in, that little factor could be the make or break. Like if they go into the toilets and go, I'm not coming back here, can't go to the toilet here, they'll probably find somewhere else, or maybe they won't come back anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, so I have to get over myself and realise that it's not about me in that moment. It's about what I'm doing for God and being his messenger and his servant,
that's
and
it.
just, you know, going out there for him.
Yeah.
And then I'll have a sleep later.
How good is that? Because, I mean, you guys are up on the platform today, which is like the highest honour in the church.
Thank God you didn't tell me that before.
I'm joking. I'm so like that. That's the way culturally we look at this. We look at the platform ministry. We look at the pastor or the preacher, or wow, if I could only do that. But the reason why, the reason why you guys are sitting here, the reason why I'm where I am, is not because I'm amazing.
You are.
No, but just back it up. Not because I'm amazing, but because I understand the purpose of serving. That serving is not about me. Like, I'm not serving for the thank you or for the adoration or because it even makes me feel good. Because the amount of times I've gone, or the pay, the amount of times I've gone home on a Sunday and gone, I am wrecked. That was exhausting. Not always. But we serve for God. We serve. The whole purpose is we're creating an environment for people to experience God, is so that new people can be awoken in their sleep or read the Word of God or be passed a message from a friend saying something and they go, I need to go to church. Right? I think all three of you have kind of shared that message of, I need to go to church. What if we went to a church where there was no God? And there was no people that were there for God, and there was people there for themselves, and very quickly, authentic people anyway, we walk out the door, we go, that's not right, that's not real. But then we're in, and like right now, you guys are in. Right now, the people here are in, yet we're in a group of people. And wherever there is people, there is problems. All right? It's unavoidable because we are imperfect human beings. We are not godly beings. We're imperfect human beings. Now, we are on the road to perfection because we are serving God, and as we're laying down our life, He makes us better. I know I am such a nicer person now than I was 10 years ago, right? So how do you go through a moment where a conflict arises with another person, with a brother or sister? How do you engage? Like, what if it's the person that you're serving on team with? What if it's the leader over you? What if it's just the person that's walked in? You started sharing your story of a personal problem. So how do we go through that?
Someone told me a long time ago that you need to pray for people like that, and it's so hard to pray for them. But I think as you go away, and the one thing that I do is realise that they may have something going on in their life. They may have demons that they need deliverance from. That's not on me. Like, unless it's something that I've done, and then I will own up for it. But if it's someone that's coming against me and personally attacking me, and I know I haven't done anything wrong, then that's on them. Like, I will pray for them, whatever it is that, that they've got going on, so that maybe their eyes will be open to it. Maybe, God can help shed some light on that. But I don't take it as a personal offence all the time. Like, yeah, we all have people that we're around that, again, will offend us in some way or another. But that's not going to get in between my relationship with God. And I'll probably step away for a little bit from that person. Like, if it's someone, like if I had a problem with you, I'd just tell you anyway. But
And I'd say I forgive you.
Thanks. There's no problems, by the way, because we haven't had that conversation. But I guess, if it's someone that I can maybe step away from for a little bit and just, meditate on it and pray about it, and, then you soften to it. I try and be, Switzerland, as they say, and not get caught up in drama. Like, I'm too old for that. I don't really want to be involved in any drama. I try not to. I know apparently I can be intimidating sometimes, unintentionally. That's never my intention. But, I think there's a lot of prayer and self-reflection in that. Is there something that I did wrong? Is it maybe something that they've got going on? That's their journey with God? Like, I'll leave that up to them if that's how they want to live their life, and, if they want to go around and gossip or do whatever it is that they've done, that's their journey with God. That's not mine. So if they have a problem with me, then I will pray for them, but I will kind of move myself back. If it's someone I'm dealing with like all the time, I'll probably step away a little bit. But just pray for them, and then obviously your heart softens as you're doing that anyway as well. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's a really good example of when someone has a problem with you,
yeah.
all right? Because, they're doing something. What about, I'm going to ask the guys over here, what about when you're the person that's upsetting someone else?
Never.
Now, I ask you both this question because
Who have you
it's
upset?
you're gonna struggle to come up, because I know you guys, but you're gonna struggle to think about a time where you've upset someone.
I mean, I don't disagree that I probably have upset people. But yeah, thinking of the time's hard. But I think it's like Chanel said, if I upset someone and I didn't know about it, then I can't do anything about it.
That's it.
If they have a problem with what I said or what I've done and they come and tell me, then I'll apologise for that, if that's the right thing to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I may not have done anything wrong. They just took offence to it.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think the ball's in their court, and if they've got a grudge, then they need to offload that and let it go through God.
Yep. Through God, in a way, I mean, the Bible actually gives us a great example of this in the book of Matthew. I can't remember the chapter. But it talks about when we've got a problem with the brothers or brethren. And so,
Going to them.
does anyone know where it is? Linda, are you Googling it for me? It's in the Bible. Pretty sure it's Matthew. Matthew 18. Thank you. Now, I'm not going to give you the answers, but like if you want to know how to deal with conflict, read Matthew chapter 18, all right? And it gives a good way of doing it. But we talked about it on Wednesday. Yeah, we did. Crazy. But do you agree with me that a problem can't stay?
Yeah.
It can stay, but it won't be good for anyone.
Yeah.
Right? It festers and
Yeah.
becomes a bad thing and goes into every place of your life, like everything you're in,
Yep.
if you don't deal with it.
Absolutely.
If you don't free yourself of it,
Yep.
it will infest everything.
Yeah. It'll go to
Into you, into everyone you have a
Yeah, that's
relationship
it.
with, everything you're doing in life. You won't be able to get rid of it until you face it, deal with it.
Absolutely. I don't even have to speak, Jeff, and you just nailed it. We can't leave. We can't leave problems. And we're allowed to have feelings and emotions. We're allowed to feel upset or even be concerned that someone is offending us. But we can't leave it in that place. If we've got a problem, we've got to sort it out. Whether we are the problem or whether someone is a problem towards us, we have to go through it. Me? Oh. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you dealt with that straight away. You thought that I might have had a problem and you just straight up asked me. You got an answer straight away. Now, I know as Christians, as Feist followers. Wow. As Christ followers, right? The closer we come to God, the more we grow. We love God, and the flip side of that, the greatest commandment that Jesus says, we love God with all our heart, right? And the other side of that is we love our neighbours as ourselves. All right? And the way we love ourselves is meant to be the way that God loves us. And so you can't have one side of that coin without the other. You can't love God and not love your neighbours, right? It's... Now I feel like we're just giving away claps. And so as a church, and especially as a growing church, we come into places where we feel like people let us down, upset us, offend us, don't love us, all those things. And we have to run it through the filter of, is it true? Or is that just the way the enemy is trying to trick me into leaving the church? This is a church where God's power moves, where the presence of God dwells. So the enemy is going to work as hard as he can to pull people out, to stop people turning up, even to miss 3 Sundays out of a month, right? When you don't connect into the community, you don't grow into the community. You're not growing into God. And that's the whole purpose of church. There's a psalm or a proverb or something about growing weary. Brain's not working.
It's food.
Not sure. They filled in the blanks. All right, we're almost done. You guys got a couple more minutes in you? Yes? All right, was there a time where there was something that you had to do, something that you were asked to do, whether by God or man, that was too hard to say yes to?
No.
No?
No, not for me. I'm not gonna don't ask me to do anything else. No. No.
Okay.
What do you mean too hard?
Well, see, I worded it weirdly.
Yes.
I'm a weird person in the church.
Told you.
Yeah, Chanel started with that. But is there anything that you've been asked to do that you've gone, no, that's impossible? Not that you haven't done it, but in yourself have gone, I can't do that.
And still done it?
And still done it? Still did it?
At our old church, the first time they asked me to do announcements, our version of announcements, which was straight after worship, same kind of thing. And I could not sleep. I was not comfortable. There were like so many people there, and I literally felt sick, and it was days leading up to it. I was practicing what I had to say in my head over and over again. I mean, it wasn't much, but I thought I was going to trip walking up on stage or something, because, it would be something that I would do. And then Indy said to me, "Don't worry about it, Mum. It's just all our church friends." And I was like, oh my gosh. Sometimes the wisdom of kids, I was like, it's so easy. Even if I did trip over on stage, we'd all laugh together anyway. It wouldn't be, something bad. But yeah, that was really hard. And then once I got over myself at that point, then I realised it wasn't that hard, and that kind of just led into, other things. Never saying no, but just, swallowing every part of me to be able to do it and say yes. So,
Yeah. You guys?
No.
No.
I got
Yes.
nothing. Look, yeah, being nervous as far as doing it, but always saying, majority of the time saying yes. Learning later on that it's okay to say no, depending on circumstances, whether it's family, whether it's work commitments, whatever. I did have a thing at the beginning, like I mentioned before, that I would say yes to everything, and I thought that's what you do as a good Christian, you say yes to everything, but the Lord's not calling you to everything. And but I learn a lot in that, and so most of the time I would say yes, and like Chanel at times dreaded it beforehand, and then when I came to it, there was nothing. You just got it done. I remember doing hospital ministry where you would walk into a ward and there's, 7 beds, and you got families visiting their kids or other family or friends or whatever, and you have to greet people cold, and you're greeting them as a chaplain or whatever, as a Christian, and that was difficult. But there was so many good experiences out of that, and there was never anyone who kind of, looked at you, weird. But, even if they didn't want it, there was always opportunity. It's funny how the Lord used it. And I think spoke to people, but the natural self wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have done it. But for some reason, I would just, yes would come out of my mouth. And so you're in this. But I wanted to say too is because I said yes, I've had opportunities I would never have had. Yeah. And I've grown in aspects that I would never have had if I didn't say yes. I would still be, limited in experience, limited in who actually God made me to be. So yes, it's scary. Dang, it's scary. But it's not as bad as you think. And on the other side, you sit back and you go, you can't believe what God's done in your life. Yep.
My mind goes to a lot of different places on that question. The first one is my default is no. That's something I'm trying to work on. But people ask things, I go no. So that's not my heart, isn't no. That's just my brain saying no. But my heart is yes in everything that I'm asked to do. And those things even now aren't easy to do. Most things that I'm asked to do, I'll say yes, but it's not easy to do it. And I had a lot of help in overcoming a lot of those things, like talking in front of people or talking to people I don't know, because I don't enjoy doing those things either. It's not natural to me, but I had lots of work doing that on the youth team. So again, I had experiences doing that, which helped me be where I am and agreed where God wants me to be and what God wants me to be doing.
It's funny you say that, Jeff, because I didn't even notice you were saying no to me.
That was my first thing.
I'd ask Jeff to do something or to help with something, and his answer was no, and I just ignored that.
That's a good move.
Maybe I could see what your heart really was, which was to say yes. So good. I just want to thank you guys for one, being up here and sharing what you've shared and answering the way you've answered it. It's been so good to hear, how this has functioned. There is a group of leaders within this church that have been asked to step up in the last couple of months, and you guys have seen it. They've been asked to grab a microphone and share or lead the prayer and open the service or do a tithes message or a communion message or be standing up here, and in the future that might lead to other things. But Linda and I put that together, and I didn't even really count the cost. Because for me, the answer of that question is, I said I would never be a pastor of a church. Right? That was I'd serve God, whatever he asked for, but I'll never be the pastor of the church. And funny enough, Linda's answer was the same. Right? The second you say, this is what I won't do, God, he goes, okay, cool, now I know where I need to be.
God did that in me to Sydney. I said I'd never go to Sydney ever.
Yeah.
That's where my church was.
And then you end up there.
Doing a youth team.
Yeah.
She'd never moved back to Kempsey, yeah. I changed that.
And so, but the reason is I knew the cost. I had counted the cost of being the pastor or the leader of a church, and I went, I can't do that. I can't put my family through that. That is too heavy. I've grown up in that situation as a child. And yet I said yes because God asked it. But then I had to start apologizing to these guys because we got them to start serving in this way without really talking about it, without really preparing the team. Because when we start serving, as we go up into that next level of serving, not the next level of honor, the responsibility comes and the weight comes, the spiritual attacks that can come. And I think everyone in the leadership team that's stepping up into that space can confess with their mouths that things have been hard lately, right? When we start carrying more than what we have before, it's heavy. And we need strength to do that. We need strength in ourselves in God. And I mean, you guys, everything you said was about, well, I come to church to serve God, right? And God is first in all. And that's so key. We need strength in our marriages, and we need strength in our families, and we need strength within our church. And in all those layers, we need strength. So as a body of believers, we need to be praying for one another. We need to be interceding for one another, praying for for strength, praying for the ability to keep fighting. I know when you start losing those areas, the church, the family, the marriage, and then the personal relationship, when they start failing, man, it gets hard. And yeah, everyone's like, yeah, 100%. And so we can't let that happen. We need to be believing for one another. I don't know if you all are going through hard times and, unsure times. Why is it feeling really difficult? All I know is something's going to break. Something's happening soon that we're getting prepared for now. The way that God gives us strength isn't go, here you go. He does. It's not like the Matrix where we're just plugged in and we receive. We go through hard times and then we receive strength. When we can count the joy in every battle, we've got strength. So, we never thought about how we were going to finish this. Awesome. Again, I want to thank you guys. Can we give these guys a round of applause?